Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janna Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Jaya Girivaradari, Gopi Janna Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janna Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Gopi Janna Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Gopi Dhana Vallabha, Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai 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 Shri Shri Radha Damodara Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Brihadrakacharya Stottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Brihadrakacharya Astottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nittai Gaura Premanandi Hari Bo Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swaminiti Namine Pachare Purvaraksham Cha Bhakta Char Bhivinata Parartha Tapi Karunyam Yasya Sarve Chite Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Today reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 9, text number 8. Finally, we are hearing the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, which are spectacular in all respects. Hold on, text number 8. Here we go. Shri Prarad Uvacha Brahma Daya Suragana Munayota Siddham Satvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Sampravahai Naraditum Puruganair Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtum Arhati Same Harir Ugrajatahe Brahma Daya Suragana Munayota Siddham Satvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Sampravahai Naraditum Puruganair Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtumarhati Same Harir Ugrajate Brahmadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachatsam Pravahai Naraditum Puruganair Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtum Arhati Same Harir Ugrajate Would anyone else like to chant?
Priparada uvacha pramadaya surgana munayota siddha sattvaikatana gatayova sampravahai nararitum purugunar arhuna pipi puru kim doshtam arhati same harir ugrajate.
Thanks, Prabhu. All right. Word for word translation says, Shri Prarada Uvacha. Prahlad Maharaj prayed. Brahma Adayaha, headed by Lord Brahma. Sura Ganaha, the inhabitants of the upper planetary systems. Munayaha, the great saintly persons. Ata, as well, like the four Kumaras and others. Siddhaha, who have attained perfection or full knowledge. Sattva, to spiritual existence. Ekatanagatayaha, who have taken without diversion to any material activities. Vachasam, of descriptions or words. Pravahai, by streams, not araditum, to satisfy. Puruganahai, although fully qualified. Aduna, until now. Api, even. Piprahu, were able. Kim, whether. Toshtum, to become pleased. Arhati, is able. Saha, he, the Lord. Me, my. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ugrajata, who am born in an Asuric family. Prahlad Maharaj prayed, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of Asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words, although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness. Then what is to be said of me? I am not at all qualified. Translation and purport. Obviously, the translation is by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the purport as well. A Vaishnava who is fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. For example, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, Jagai Madai Haite Muni Se Papishtam, Pushira Kita Haite Muni Se Lakishtam. Thus he considers himself unqualified, lower than the worms in stool, and more sinful than Jagai and Madhai. A pure Vaishnava actually thinks of himself in this way. Similarly, although Prahlad Maharaj was a pure exalted Vaishnava, he thought himself most unqualified to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Every pure Vaishnava should think like this. There you go. One should not be falsely proud of his Vaishnava qualifications. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore instructed us, Janarapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadhena kirtaniyaha sada hari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjanam Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shcham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhum Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So finally, Prahlad Maharaj is offering prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev, and he says first, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of asuras, demons, ungodly, asura, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Of course, with his first line, he shows his qualification that his concern is to satisfy the Lord, which is somewhat the motivation of all of those who came before him to offer prayers. But if they're not pure devotees, then their concern would also include something else. Yes, Lord, please be satisfied so that I can get something that I want. This is the mixed devotion which generally characterizes the demigods. That's why they're still in the material world and yet highly qualified because of their piety. But still, it's mixed devotion. They love to serve the Lord, particularly because they also get all sorts of power and majesty and opulence, which is the Lord's quality. But here's Prahlad, even in his first sentence, his very first statement expresses his exceptional quality. How do I satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? That's it. That's the concern. That's the interest. Exclusive devotion is something very exceptional, very rare, and therefore we are very fortunate to hear about it from Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, what could we possibly know about it? It's not going to just pop up. We're not just going to wake up one day and say, yeah, oh yeah, just pure devotion to the Lord. That's what I should be doing. Rather, by hearing from the pure devotees about the pure devotees, we might just hope to get a chance to possibly maybe remember that that's our original quality as well. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kamanoy Shravanade Shuddhachite Karya Odoy. That actually this Krishna Prema, this pure devotion, is already our eternal perfection. It's already there. That's actually our quality, deep, 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 deep down inside. And Shravana Adi, especially by hearing, and so many other means of devotion, but especially by hearing, Shravana Adi Shuddha Chitte, our consciousness can become purified, and we can remember what this is like. What Prahlad is experiencing. It only wants to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, how remarkable it is that he's asking, how can I? I'm born in a family of asuras. How can I offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Unlike all others before him, he's not asking for something. Simply wants to please the Lord. And so he remarks, he contemplates, even until now, all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words, although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness. We know Prahlad Maharaj's qualification is superlative, but it is the nature of a devotee to think, I'm not that. I'm not it. I am not qualified. Actually, if we look at the Sanskrit, we don't really see the words, I am not qualified. It seems that in this verse, it does say, you know, how can he be pleased with me? Kim toshtum arhati saha me hari. How is it that he can be pleased with me? But there isn't really part of the Sanskrit that says, I am not at all qualified. It seems that in this verse, like in a few actually, in Prahlad's prayers, Srila Prabhupada employs the rite of Bhava Anuvada to translate not just every single word exactly in a pedantic way, but rather really expressing the bhava, the mood, by saying, I am not qualified. And Prabhupada takes his prerogative as the Yuga Acharya to, to help us to understand that mood in this purport to this verse, saying that this is how someone who's really qualified thinks. They think that they're very unqualified. I don't know about all of you, dear devotees, but it's been my habit, maybe just out of some sort of feeling of appreciation, a sort of reverence and fascination by this mood. I've been in the habit of making a mockery of this mood in the association of other devotees. Oh, yes, you are so great, and I am so low, and I am like the stool in the worm. There's this devotee in Los Angeles, some of you may know, Sachitanoy Prabhu, who, being Mexican, English is not his first language. One time he gave Srimad Bhagavatam class. He's such a wonderful devotee, of course. He really, really is highly qualified, like Prahlad Maharaj, and does nothing but book distribution like all day, every day, practically his entire life. And he's so wonderful. And he gave a Bhagavatam class once, but because English isn't his first language, he got the words a little bit mixed up. And he said, I am lower than the stool in the worm. And we all just like stunned that he could take the incredible expression of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami even to the next level. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, of course, has famously given this sort of analogy to express his feeling of himself, that he's lower than those worms that live in the stool and eat the stool. But then Sachitanoi, perhaps out of just a bit of slip of the tongue, said, I am lower than the stool in the worm, in the stool. Even now, as I'm thinking of this poetic visualization, it's like it's humorous. I can't even imagine it because I don't have that qualification like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has, like Sachitanoi Prabhu, and as Srila Prabhupada saying so explicitly in this verse, a Vaishnava who's fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. Extremely low. This is extremism. This is the extremism that we were warned about in religion. To consider oneself extremely low is such a high qualification. One who thinks himself extremely low is very qualified to receive the mercy of the Lord. Kripa sudasaridyasya vishvam aplavayantapi nicha ga eva sada bhati tam chaitanya prabhum bhaje. As is also said by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, our Param Guru, in the first verse of 14th chapter of the Adi Leela, or the 8th chapter, or the ninth chapter. It's the first verse of some chapter. Sorry. But he says that the Lord's mercy, it flows throughout the entire universe, just like the celestial Ganga. And just as water naturally travels to the lowest place, similarly, the Lord especially favors those who are most fallen. Nicha ga. Nicha means very, very low. This is perhaps a little contrary to the aspirations and purposes that we have been told, especially those of us growing up in America. In America, first you get the women, then you get the money, then you get the power. I can't remember what was the order actually, but that's really summarizes the American aspiration, and really anyone in the material world become qualified by getting more and more and more. And yet the qualification of the Vaishnava is to be very low, to have nothing else. Akinchana, to have nothing else. Trinadapi sunichena. I mean, this verse that we've all recited so many times is very, very emphatic. Api means like a lot. Trinad api sunichena. Very, very low. Nicha, meaning very low. Sunicha, very low. Very, very low. I mean, it just goes on and on. How low? Lower than the straw in the street. Around, I mean, I guess at Gita Nagari, as you're walking around, you might see a little bit of straw as Damodar Kata Prabhu is out spreading the straw using the that thing, spreading the straw around. A bit is dropped upon the road, and as we're driving in and out to the farm, we think nothing of it. Just drive right over it. It's, it's nothing. Sometimes we're a little disgusted by everything. Wouldn't it be nice if this could be swept out of the way so the road was clean? So the analogy is still so relevant, lower than the straw in the street. Up here in State College, if we saw straw in the street, and we might be a little fascinated by it. Look, there's some straw. I wonder if there's a horse around or something. We might take interest. So what's even lower than the straw in the street? Probably in the wintertime, that dirty snow that's there on the side of the road after plowing. It's got all that grit and gravel and trash in it. You know, that sort of New York snow, that mountain of snow that's full of trash and urine. We need a relevant modern analogy for those of us who live in places where there isn't straw in the street. But the devotee thinks oneself lower than that. And this is the high qualification, according to Srila Prabhupada. A Vaishnava who is fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. And even though Prahlad Maharaj was pure and exalted, he thought himself most unqualified to offer prayers to the Lord. Then Prabhupada says, Mahajano Yenigata Sapanta. Every pure Vaishnava should think like this. In other words, we're following in the footsteps of the Mahajana, Prahlad Maharaj, and therefore we have to do the same thing. One should not be falsely proud of his Vaishnava qualifications. In this way, we can really offer nice prayers to Krishna. We can offer nice service to Krishna. There is nothing else that Krishna is interested in except for devotion. There's nothing else that he needs. Srila Prabhupada has said this so many times. There's nothing that he's lacking in Goloka Vrindavan. There's nothing that he's missing. There's nothing that he wants from us that he doesn't already have except for our devotion. And so if we think ourselves entitled to a relationship with the Lord because of the body that we have, a particular ethnicity which seems to be favored in our particular scriptures, right? That's a problem all over the world for every religious tradition. Whoever's ethnicity or whoever's stool factory is ethnically adjacent to, the original culture of that particular spiritual tradition, then they think themselves better than others. This is a problem. Nor is it that our gender, which is just a burden in this world, is somehow a qualification in devotion. Actually, Lord Kapila Dev says, uh, Jan, what does he say? That Pumksa Striya Maituni Bhavmetam Taror Mityur Hridaya Granti Mahu. It's actually a big problem. Pumksa and Striya. I mean, that's my interpretation of the verse. It doesn't just say Striya, woman. It says Pumksa Striya, man and woman. Maituni Bhava, the attraction between them is Janasya Mohoya Mahamameti. It's the bewilderment of all living entities. I guess the only exception are the asexual. What is the term for bacteria that reproduce themselves by mitosis? For everybody else, pumksa and striya is a problem. It's a disqualification. So those of us who think that our genitals are really amazing and that therefore Krishna loves us more. I mean, I don't know. I don't see that in the Shastra. It seems like Lord Kapila Dev is saying that's not a qualification. Neither our money, our wealth, as if Krishna does not have all of the wealth. The very dust of Vrindavan is Chintamani touchstone, which can transform anything into gold. This is the dust that he plays in with the cows and the cowherd boys. What does he care for our fiat currency, which is just an imagination, which depends on warfare to have value? What does he care about US dollars? Nor our erudition, as Rupa Goswami says, something pravachanena. What is that verse? Can't remember. Anyway, neither our erudition or ability to speak in all sorts of clever ways, that doesn't actually impress the Lord. The personified Vedas are praying to him constantly. They know a lot more shlokas than you or I. What is it that Krishna wants? His only devotion is the only thing that he doesn't have is our devotion. That's the only qualification to have some devotion. And because we don't have that qualification, if we can just stand next to someone who does have that qualification, then the Lord is just so kind and so liberal. He said, all right, you can come too. You just somehow, somehow you just happen to be, within the proximity of someone who really does have devotion. So, okay, then you're also my devotee. That's it. That's it, dear devotees. And thinking about that, then we can really understand. Lord Chaitanya is saying, Trinada pi sunichina, taroda pi sishna, amanena manadena. I, I, I don't have anything else. Amanina manadena. Devoid of all sense of false prestige. I don't have anything else. And then kirtaniya sadahari, then one can chant always. This method of chanting always, kirtaniya sadahari, is especially for those who, in the Kali Yuga, are very low, are disgusting, are pathetic, are desperate, who are lower than straw in the street, who cannot do anything worthwhile, it's especially meant for them. That's the prescription for those in the Kali Yuga who are just pathetic. We can't do anything else very well. Can't do elaborate rituals. We're not very good at worshiping the deity. We're not very good at playing instruments, even. What are we good at? What can any of us do that compares to what's being offered, even by demigods in this within this material universe? What to speak of on the Vaikuntha planets? What to speak of in Goloka Vrindavan? The sort of artistic finesse and skill saturated with devotion offered by the gopis in Vrindavan. What do we have in comparison? And so if we think anything else that I do is some sort of great qualification that entitles me to a relationship with the Lord, then we've missed the point of Lord Chaitanya's very emphatic verse, Trinada Peach Sunichena. I've got nothing else. I've got nothing. I am nothing. I'm lower than straw in the street. Therefore, all I can do is chant the holy names of the Lord, Kirtaniya Sada Hari, non-stop, Sada. That's the prescription for people like me. Sada, one of the very first questions I asked to my spiritual master because someone told me about this. I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, but I just asked this question just because I was trying to understand practically. And I asked His Holiness Devamrita Swami, I said, Kirtaniya Sada Hari, Sada means always. Is that literal? Or is it like, you know, if you're doing the service, it's like on the same level as chanting, it's like chanting. It's all absolute. I had some sort of like philosophical, esoteric understanding of that everything is the same. It's all one. So I asked him, is this literal? Kirtaniya Sada Hari? Gurudev said, yes, always chant. What's the problem? He said, what's the problem? Have you got anything better to do? This is what he said to me. Have you got anything better to do? And years later, I'm still thinking about, wow, there's nothing better I can do. I really can't do anything else. There's really nothing else I can do that's better. And so Kirtani Asada Hari, therefore I should just chant all the time. It finally makes sense. So this verse, Trinada Pisunichana, Torah Pisishna, Amani Namane Dena Kirtani Asada Hari. It's a lot for us to contemplate. If we really could understand this mood, then we could really chant all the time. This is how Lord Chaitanya is feeling. This is how Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is feeling. This is how Prahlad Maharaj is feeling. And this is how we're supposed to feel, as Prabhupada says, by quoting Mahajanoyen Kata Sapanta. We're supposed to do this too. We're supposed to feel very, very low. Krishna doesn't need anything else from us. He just wants our devotion, as Srila Prabhupada says so many times. It's only the devotion that Krishna is interested in. Everything else that we are attached to, everything else that we identify with, is merely an obstacle to that expression of pure devotion. That's all. And we can justify it in so many ways. We can reconcile our attachments. That's why we have the ashramas, especially the grihastha ashramas, to reconcile so much attachment. Yes, yes, yes. I want this and I want that and I want to have all this stuff, but I use a little bit in Krishna service, so it's good, right? Sure, it's good, but it's still an obstacle. Is still an impediment. Everything but pure devotion is an impediment. Anya abhilashita shunyam, jnana karmadhyanavritam, anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. Any type of jnana or karma is a covering over pure devotion. Any of it. Any speculative idea about what I am and what is valuable and what is worthwhile in this world and who's doing what is a covering over our pure devotion. It's a smudge. And any type of karma. Oh, but this action brought me this great result. I should do it again. And anyway, I'll give a little bit to Krishna afterwards. Now, this is all Jnana Karma Nivranavritam. Pure devotion is not tainted by any of this, jnana or karma. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Ruttama. But what, without any other desire except the desire to please the Lord very favorably, that's bhakti. And if we don't hear about it from Prahlad Maharaj, how would we ever know? How would we ever know? I mean, how is it possible for us to know pure devotion? The tendency towards selfish gratification and misidentification runs so deep over the course of many, many lifetimes. As Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Anadi Karma Pale. We don't even know the beginning of this entanglement, this compromat. We're all compromised. It's not just the guys on the Epstein list. We're all compromised. Anadi Karma Pale. We just think, well, they're a lot worse than me. I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as them. We're still compromised. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, we don't even know, we can't even remember the beginning of where we got ourselves stuck in the muck of material existence. So only devotion, which is free from all of that, anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavritam, no other desire except the desire to please the Lord, being completely free from the covering quality of jnana and karma, anukulyena Krishna nushilanam, very favorably absorbed in devotional service, thinking of the Lord very favorably. That's really bhakti. Anything else is just it's the detour, it's the side road, it's the distraction. So recognizing that that ain't me, that's not describing me, then we should relate to what Prahlad Maharaj is saying here. This is very relatable. Even though it's the highest level of devotion, it's a Vaishnava who's fully qualified according to Srila Prabhupada. So it's very relatable because I'm definitely not like that. I'm just, I'm just hardly even the littlest sprinkle of devotion. My only claim to devotion is that somehow I bumped into some devotees and I didn't say no. But this quality of love that's being expressed by Prahlad, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, our Srila Prabhupada, it's so incredible. It's so magnificent. That if we're not hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, we won't be able to recognize its exceptional quality, different from all other types of piety or good karma, like the demigods. That's why Prahlad's expressing this sort of surprise. These demigods, they're all so qualified, headed by Lord Brahma. They're situated in the mode of goodness, and yet they're unable to satisfy the Lord. He's recognizing there must be a very exceptional quality that satisfies the Lord. It's not just mode of goodness. It's not just power and opulence and erudition. What did he say? Streams of excellent words. It could not satisfy the Lord. The Lord is only satisfied by devotion. Hare Krishna. Not even this, not even Indian food can satisfy Krishna. Just want to share one thing. Just to be a little controversial, of course, to make sure everybody's awake. But in Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, there's a description of one conversation where Prabhupada says, if devotion is not there, Krishna doesn't like any food, either tasty or not tasty. He does not accept it. Then a devotee says, in India, Srila Prabhupada says, oh, India, India. Don't talk of India. Talk of philosophy. If there is no devotion, Krishna does not accept anything, whether in India or in your country. Krishna is not obliged to accept anything costly because it is very tasty. Krishna has very many tasty dishes in Vaikuntha. He is not hankering after your food. He accepts your devotion, bhakti. The real thing is devotion, not the food. Krishna does not accept any food of this material world. He accepts only the devotion. He goes on, of course, to quote Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. Anyway, it's very interesting. Of course, in the absence of devotion, we try to codify the process of approaching the Lord, and rightfully so. I mean, that is there for a reason. We have our formulas, we have our methods. We should do this at this time in this place, spin around in so many circles, and on a Tuesday do like that, and on a Wednesday dress like this. And all of these things, they're certainly there. They're listed by our acharyas. But we know, of course, from our acharyas as well, that all of these only serve the purpose of remembering Krishna, hearing and chanting about Krishna. And if it does not serve that purpose, then it should be given up. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, this is surrender, to accept whatever is favorable for devotion, to reject whatever is unfavorable. So Prabhupada says, do not talk of India. We should not imagine just by doing something as it's done in India, that therefore Krishna is obliged. There's only devotion. It's only devotion. Realizing that it's only devotion is very natural for us to feel like Prahlad, like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. That's the one thing I don't have. I can do everything else. The one thing I don't have is this devotion. It's very natural for us to feel like that. Therefore, these verses are so relevant. Therefore, Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari. I'm not like that. So let me just chant Hare Krishna all the time. What else can I do? That's all I got. That's all I got, Krishna. I can just chant Hare Krishna all the time. So Prabhupada says, unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Hare Krishna. That's all I have to say about this. I just pray that by the blessings of our Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, that Prahlad Maharaj is hearing us, reading these verses in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially as we approach the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev. Pray that they will just bless us with a little bit of understanding that yes, we are unqualified, but our qualification is that we get to hear about these great devotees, chant their names, chant the names of the Lord. That's it. I pray that they'll be pleased with that. The Lord will be pleased with what little we can do. And with our constant chanting, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Is there anything better to do? I can't think of anything better to do. So therefore, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Can I do anything better? Am I capable of doing anything better? No. So therefore, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. We can only pray that the Lord is pleased with our attempt to constantly chant. Hare Krishna consciousness. Thanks, dear devotees, for tuning in, listening. So therapeutic to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, to remember what is our real position, what is our real status. It's actually so healing to wake up from this illusion of thinking that I've got any other qualification in terms of my body and my possessions. All I have is this holy name given to me by the Lord's devotees. That's all I can do that's worth anything. So, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Let me just chant all the time. Hare Krishna. If there's no comments or questions, then we can get on with some chanting. But of course, I have not chanted my 16 rounds yet, so I'd like to. Oh, Tarak, dear Tarika Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Would you like to?
Always something, always questions, always comments. You know, I'm going to try to restrain myself to a reasonable block of time, but I could discuss this verse for hours. There's just so much here, and I want to thank you for your nice treatment of this verse. I appreciate your class.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And there are lots of angles that one could approach um, any of these verses from, as we can see from Srila Prabhupada's example. If you look at his lectures, there are instances in which Srila Prabhupada speaks on the same verse multiple times, and not infrequently, each time he speaks on the same verse, he gives a completely different talk. Uh, he'll discuss completely different angles of vision, but sometimes he'll stress the same points again and again. I'll tell you something about this particular verse. I was personally present for two instances when Srila Prabhupada spoke on this verse. Um, and I'll tell you as well that of all the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, this particular verse is among the those verses that Srila Prabhupada most frequently spoke on.
Yes.
Um, this particular verse, he spoke on it 10 times.
Wow. In like a Bhagavatam class or lecture?
Yes, Bhagavatam classes. There are only 5 other verses that he spoke on more than this verse. Would you like to know what they are, or do you know what they are?
Um, I mean, I could guess. I did know that the majority of his lectures were from Prahlad's prayers, but I couldn't guess the exact verses.
I'll tell you what I came up with. Um, let's see. In no particular order, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, Text 1, Srila Prabhupada spoke on that 14 times. Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 2, I'm getting out of sequence here. Text 1, Srila Prabhupada spoke on 20 times.
That's Lord Rishabdev?
I believe so. And text 2 of the same chapter, he spoke on 11 times.
Hare Krishna.
Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 1, Srila Prabhupada spoke on 12 times. And um, here's something fascinating. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 26, Srila Prabhupada spoke on that 23 times.
Divinity and
Um,
Divine Service, great chapter. What did you say, text 26?
yes, 1, 2, 26.
Really? Mumukshavo Ghora Rupam Hitva Bhutan Pitan Ata. Are you sure, Prabhu?
I am sure 1, 2, 26, he spoke on 23 times.
Okay.
Okay. And um, there are 3 verses in Bhagavad Gita that Srila Prabhupada spoke on more than today's verse. One of them is Bhagavad Gita 2:13. Srila Prabhupada spoke on that 12 times. And Bhagavad Gita um, first verse of chapter 7, he spoke on, and this is the topmost record, 43 times. 7-1, he spoke on 43 times.
Very scientific verse. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1.
There are numerous chapters of Bhagavad Gita that Srila Prabhupada never spoke on. The entire chapter, not a single verse. Um, anyway, today's verse he spoke on 8 times. I compared my notes from the two lectures that I heard personally to try to get an idea of where his points coincided and where they differed. Um, I could take a lot of time and tell you about each of the individual points that he made at each instance, but I'll just focus on where they overlapped, and they also overlap with his purport. So he spoke about Prahlad's humility. Both lectures strongly emphasized that Prahlad Maharaj considered himself to be unqualified, that he identifies himself as Ugrajate, born in a demonic family. He considers himself he compares himself unfavorably to Brahma and the demigods and the sages. He considers himself to be far less qualified. And both lectures heavily emphasized the conclusion that a Vaishnava never thinks himself qualified, even when he is very highly qualified. Other points of overlap were the failure of material or sattvic qualification, that these are insufficient to please Krishna. Both lectures state that even highly qualified beings in sattva guna could not satisfy Krishna. That even sattva guna is insufficient, and devotion, not qualification, is what pleases Krishna. Another overlapping point is that Vaishnava humility is a defining characteristic of the Vaishnava. Both lectures emphasize that a true Vaishnava is meek, humble, he is not proud. And in both lectures, Srila Prabhupada quoted Trinadapi Sunichena. The shared conclusion there was that humility is not optional. It is the symptom of real advancement. And I'll tell you why. It is because as long as you have not come to this point, you are still clinging to upadis. You are still clinging to false identities. It means that you may have given up all kinds of gross material attachments. You may have given up sense gratification on the gross platform, but subtle gratification remains. And so you are still bound to the material element of the mind. That or those upadis, the false identities, the false ego that arises from the mind and false ego, that has to be transcended to come to the platform of Brahman, to understand who you actually are. If you're thinking I'm this or I'm that, I have this or that qualification, you are still misidentifying. You're not understanding who you actually are. You're not understanding that you're spirit. You're still covered by false ego and your mind. So somehow or other, you have to peel off those layers. That process happens by chanting Hare Krishna. Chanting is both the means and the conclusion. It's the result that you arrive at when you've completed the process. It's the actual activity of the soul. But when you haven't arrived at that stage, it's also the means to get to that condition. Anyway, I'm pretty sure if I look at the other 6 instances of Srila Prabhupada giving this, a class on this particular verse, he will say the same things again about humility.
Mm.
It's not just the nature of a devotee, it's the nature of a pure spirit soul. It's that's what happens when you shed all the layers of material covering. And so the topmost devotee, the Uttama Adhikari, is not trying to be humble. He is genuinely humble. He genuinely believes that everyone is more advanced than him. That's his vision. He looks around him and he sees that everyone is far more qualified than he himself. He genuinely believes himself to be very lowly and insignificant and unqualified. He doesn't artificially try to arrive at that condition. It's what happens automatically when one is fully purified. So it's something to aspire for. One of the things that Srila Prabhupada mentions in his lectures, talking about Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj is a Mahajan, that he is a model to be followed, that we should follow in his footsteps, but not that we imitate. We should not imitate. We should follow in his footsteps. Um, and this is an important point to understand the difference between following and imitating. But it brings up a question, an important question that exercises a lot of devotees, and there's been a lot of opinions put forward about this. And I'll tell you that I disagree with it with a lot of them. I have my own understanding of this, and maybe we'll talk about that. But I'll ask you what your thoughts are. Um, the issue arises for devotees based upon all this, and Srila Prabhupada's emphasis on becoming very meek and humble, thinking oneself actually lower than the straw in the street, which is, that's pretty damn low. That's, not even knee high to a grasshopper. It's, really low. You can't get much lower than that. So some people will argue that this is not psychologically healthy, that it's very important to maintain good self-esteem. So, what is self-esteem, and what does it mean? And is that concept in conflict with the Vaishnava principle of thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street? Is there a way to reconcile the two, or are they irreconcilable? Is the concept of self-esteem actually a mistake of modern psychology? Um, or is the actual um, resolution to understand that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not all these concepts that arise from false ego. I have nothing to do with any of those things. I am indeed very insignificant. I am, 1/10,000th part the tip of a hair, extremely tiny and insignificant. I have no particular qualification. Any capability that I have is actually coming from Krishna. I have no personal competency. I'm completely dependent upon Krishna for everything. I don't even know how many hairs are on my head. I can't move a finger or even breathe without Krishna's help. So, what qualifications do I actually have? So, my opinion about self-esteem is, and with all due respect to those, we have a lot of devotees who are students of psychology, and they tend to take these things seriously. But I personally believe that the concept of self-esteem is a lot of hooey. That this is just not supported by our Vaishnava Siddhanta. We are directed to actually become genuinely humble by the process of devotional service. We arrive at a condition of having what might be described as extremely low self-esteem, but it is not destructive. The Some devotees um, who have some significant qualifications in the field of psychology have tried to resolve the issue in this way um, that what is called low self-esteem, the earmark of it is that it is destructive, whereas Vaishnav humility is not destructive. Um, I would say that the actual resolution is that a devotee, um, his extreme humility is not destructive because he understands that I'm not all of these things that so many people want to think that they are. I'm actually very insignificant, um, but all those things are Krishna's property, and they must therefore be protected. I have to take care of what belongs to Krishna. So I don't allow myself to be battered by an abusive husband, for example, because this body belongs to Krishna. I have to protect it. Um, I have to protect this mind. All of it is meant to be used in Krishna's service. Everything must be preserved for Krishna's service. Anyway, that's very, very briefly my angle. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. And it is an issue, one that I have strong feelings about as well. Uh, and I'm in agreement with you that I think a lot of the psychology that's popular today can be more of an impediment than a cure. But then not everyone is dealing with the same issues on a psychological level, Prabhu, and there are many for whom that some of these ways of thinking psychologically are helping those devotees to become more Krishna conscious. And, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, accept whatever is favorable, reject whatever is unfavorable. We shouldn't assume that, everybody has the same baggage from previous lives like you and I do. Maybe some devotees really benefit from that. As for humility, yes, it doesn't seem like it is congruent with the modern psychology way of thinking, that we're not supposed to consider ourselves lower than the straw on the street. But humility is not just that. I mean, that's not just humility. That's the ecstasy of pure devotion that Lord Chaitanya is describing. It's like beyond this universe. But the humility is described in other ways. As you know, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, Prabhupada says that humility means not being anxious to be glorified by others. What is it? Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. Of course, there's also parts of our scripture that says that we should be very confident, like in the Nectar of Instruction, text number 3, Utsahan nishchayat dharyat. It also says one should be very confident. Nishchayat. Very confident that I'm doing devotional service and pleasing the Lord, and everything else is taken care of. Shadashabde Vishwas Kahe Sudrida Nishchaya. Krishna Bhakti Sarva Karma, Krishna Bhakti Hoyle Sarva Karma Krita Hoya. Having a lot of faith and confidence that just by serving Krishna, everything else is taken care of. So perhaps part of the problem, dear Tarka Prabhu, is that we think of humility as just, I don't know, like being pathetic. I'm trying to get a well-rounded, what I think is a well-rounded understanding that humility is not just thinking oneself very low, but also just being so amazed by Krishna that one doesn't think of oneself much at all, because Krishna is a lot more important to be thinking about. But also having full confidence in Krishna. Utsahan nishtayat dharyat. What Rupa Goswami says this is very favorable for devotion. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts. Obviously, it's a large subject, but I'm generally in agreement with you, Prabhu, that the best psychology is what we're learning from Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishnadas, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is the real cure, the panacea, the cure for all of our ailments, both on the body and the mind in this world. I'll leave it at that, if that's all right. We could discuss more, just you and me personally, if you some other time, if you like, because I also have a lot of opinions about that.
Thank you, Prabhu. I'll say one quick thing
Sure.
that before devotees start writing to me and torching me, which does happen from time to time. That
Part of the fun.
yeah, part of my focus when I comment in class is to try to provoke discussion. Um, we have generally just a small core of individuals that regularly comment, and I try to spark uh, some some thought and some discussion to increase our meditation on the day's verse and the topics discussed, and because that's a healthy part of the process. It's an important part of the process. It's something that Srila Prabhupada encouraged us to do, and so my purpose sometimes I will get controversial just to encourage people to think, and but my advice is don't invest yourself too much emotionally in these issues. That's not necessarily productive, but we should be thoughtful. And thinking about these things is Krishna meditation. It's progressive and purifying and uplifting. So that's all I had to say. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Tarika Brew. We appreciate all of your authentic, authoritative insights and your attempt to provoke more discussion and thoughtfulness about Krishna. We need agent provocateur. We appreciate you doing that service for all of us. Keeping the Bhagavatam class nourished by your constant watering, by your participation, and by your enthusiasm for Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you to Taraka Prabhu. I don't think there's any other comments or questions. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Chakra Prabhu, waiting patiently. Thank you, dear Hare Chakra Prabhu. Would you like to say something? Please correct all of my mistakes.
No, you never make mistakes because you always repeat what you hear from the scripture, and that is the ultimate truth. Yeah, I'm just showing some interest in what Charaka Prabhu was saying. But personally, what I realize is that sometimes some of us devotees we confuse humility with what do we call it? Inferiority complex.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said what I personally realize is that some of us we sometimes confuse humility with inferiority complex.
Inferiority complex. Yes, yes.
Yeah. You see, when someone has inferiority complex, that is completely different from humility. And the fact that you are humble doesn't mean that you are lowering yourself. You are just lowering yourself. No, humility actually pronounce you, even though you might not be seen. Example, it's like we talk about the blade of grass. The blade of grass, when it's used to decorate a compound, it's so nice, and people will appreciate the grass as being so nice. But there is one part of the grass that is more important than the grass itself. But that part is not even seen, and that is the
That
root.
the roots. The roots.
Exactly. Nobody sees it. Similarly, it's like a tree or a plant. Maybe so beautiful, people will be glorifying the plant. But what we refuse to understand is that there is some aspect of the plant that is so important, the root. Without the root, the plant itself is useless. So when we try to learn the what we call it, the quality of humility, we become like the actual root, and people might not even see us. People might not even recognize us. but we will be holding the actual fort. We will be holding the actual what do we call it? The actual plant in place. All the glorification is going to the plant, but it's the root that is the most important aspect of that plant. And so, what personally my understanding is that when we become really humble, then we become like the root. And in that way, people might not even see us. But we will be doing the real job as the root. So that stanza that says that we should be as humble as a blade of grass and as tolerant as a tree. It is actually very, very practical. And if even we put spiritual life aside, materially, it's very important. I mean, take for instance, if somebody is really rich, extremely rich, and yet the person becomes so humble, what do people say?
They say, I don't know, what do they say?
Yeah, people say, wow, this guy, he's on a different plane altogether. Despite all his riches, he doesn't show off. He doesn't do anything like he's the dominating figure in any environment. He's so humble. People appreciate the humility more than even the riches that the person has. So humility, personally, I know that is really, really important. Whether we want to exhibit it materially or spiritually, humility is actually the root to hold anything in place. So the scripture is not lying, and people may describe it. People may describe it in different ways, but like I said, personally, this is the little realization that I have, that the more we become humble, then we go deeper into the soil. And the more we go deeper into the soil as the roots of a particular situation, a plant or a grass or anything, we become like the sustaining factor of that entity. And so similarly, the more we become humble, we go deeper, we will go underground. People might not even recognize us. People might not even see us. But we will be sustaining the system of what? Of bhakti. And that is exactly what Prahlad was doing. Prahlad was so humble that he actually was the root of bhakti. And yet he was saying that he's not even qualified to offer prayers to the Lord. This is my two what do we call it? 2 cents. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Hari Chakravarti. Yes, such a great analogy. The roots. I remember His Holiness Radhanath Swami gave a similar analogy talking about salt. The humble devotee is like the salt that's in the meal. You don't really think about the salt when someone cooks. You think, wow, that you don't say, wow, your salt is very good. But without the salt, there's not a lot of flavor in the meal. It doesn't get a lot of credit. We describe the meal as because of the other ingredients. So he said similarly, a humble devotee is like the salt. And your analogy of being like the roots are in the dirt. And yet that's what sustains the whole plant. Such a great analogy. In contrast, an inferiority complex is really just another type of ego. I'm so low, I'm so sad, I'm so pathetic, me, still thinking about anything but Krishna. And so we don't want to be like that. We want to be absorbed in Krishna and therefore naturally humble. So thank you, Hari Chakraprabhu. Oh my Krishna, Leela Kishori Mataji is also raising her hand. This is like a round 2 Bhagavatam class. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going.
Hare Krishna, good morning.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
I'm so glad you have the time this morning, and thank you for a wonderful, wonderful class.
Yeah, I don't have any work yet.
And then I was thinking how sweet it is that Taraka Prabhu does what he does, because it really does often make me think like more deeply about what was said in class and what we're talking about. And what I was thinking about, I'm not as scholarly as all of you, so if I'm quoting it from the wrong place, please correct me. But in the 9th mantra of Sri Ishopanishad, Srila Prabhupada in his purport says that the Supreme Lord created us, basically, I'm paraphrasing, solely because he wanted to enjoy our affection. Like he doesn't need us. He wants to enjoy our love for him. And that, if that doesn't make me humble, I mean, it's like, think about that the God of universes, like not just this universe, universes, created each and every one of us because he wants to enjoy the talents that he gave to us, the gifts he gave us. He wants us to give those back and to love him. And then that's where my self-esteem comes from at the same time, because it's like, wow, whatever little thing I have, what does Krishna say about it? You could give me a flower, some water, a leaf, but do it with love and I'll accept it. And it's like, so whatever I have, if I can offer it just with an open heart and open hands, God is going to accept that and like enjoy that I did that. And that's like huge. So for me, it's like, yeah, how can I not be humble? I mean, just think about your children. So one of them brings you, I don't know, one of those little things they make, at some time. It's like, here it is for you, Daddy, I made it. And like, really, if you were an art critic, you'd be looking at it like, what is this? But because they did it because they love you and they want you to have it and they want you to see it, it's just like you're framing this little hand that they, traced and put like I love when you make whatever for me, and you'll keep it like years and years. I still have those little hands, those little turkey hands and whatever that my kids made, and I don't think about it was made at this Thanksgiving. I think, wow, this little baby loved me so much. They made this little picture of me and wanted me to have it, and I can feel that love when I look at it. And so for me, it's like, just think about that we have this amazing, loving Father, because he also says in that purport that we're all sons and daughters of the Lord. We all are, all the Jivas. And so then when I think about that I am a child, a beloved child of this wonderful Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he just wants me to love him. You have a beautiful voice and you offer that, Yashodev, every time that you sing in class. And when you do, I think Krishna's smiling because he gave you that voice and that ability to play that guitar the way that you did. And we don't all have that, you know. And each of us has something to offer. And that's where the humility comes from. And then also be able to look at each and every one of our sisters and brothers and say, wow, look at that wonderful thing, whatever it is. How Taraka Prabhu can, like, he just is a wealth. He has all these notes and he can find them. I couldn't find notes like that if you paid me, and he can. And then bring them to class and then do it in a way where, like, hours later, I'll be thinking about it. That's an amazing gift. Hari Chakra, how he can quote from every book of life, and just like verse, chapter, and connect it all. What an amazing gift, So all of these things, how can we not be humble and at the same time just be ecstatic that Krishna thought us up, each and every one of us, so that we can love him and love one another. So that's what I got out of it, and it's kind of simple, and that's how I think. But I'm just so grateful for all of the association, because at the end of the day, it continues to draw me to Krishna. And isn't that what it's all about? Hare Krishna.
Wow, thank you so much, Leela Kishori Mataji, for glorifying all the devotees. It's so pleasing to hear. Yes, it's amazing to think that God wants to love me. It's like we think ourselves so unqualified for love that we doubt even our own spouses sometimes. Do they really love me? I don't know. My own children. But God wants to love me. I mean, that's very humbling. That's the sort of humility that comes naturally, just like thinking that's so amazing. So thank you for that wonderful example. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Leela Kishore Mataji. Please give Bhagavatam class so we can have more of that. Tarika Prabhu, you have something else you'd like to add, Prabhu?
Real quick, just a correction. You asked about Srimad Bhagavatam 1 through 26. You were right.
Awesome.
I typed incorrectly. The actual verse is Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 6, not 26. So Srila Prabhupada spoke
Acha,
on that
yeah,
verse 23
Savai
times.
Pumsam Paro Dharma. Yeah. Yeah, I was certain that that one about the ghastly forms of the demigods couldn't have been the one that Prabhupada was talking about the most. But yes, this one, 126. So you said he lectured on this the most, more than any other verse.
Yes, 23 times.
So an important shloka to learn. Savai pumsa parodharmo yato bhaktir hokshaje ahoitakya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. That's everything right there. Oh my Krishna, even Dhruva Maharaj is here. Wow, I'm getting blessed. I
Gauranga.
get all the best today.
No, I just wanted to just say that even Balaram Mahaprabhu is a candidate for class.
I've asked him. We're warming him up to the idea. We're getting there.
Hey, Jai, Hariwal.
It's a little daunting to give you first Bhagavatam class, but he's almost there. We're trying to get it happening. All right, dear devotees, it's 8:30. It's been ecstatic. Of course, we haven't even come close to the sort of length and ecstasy of Bhagavatam class that Janavatsala and the Parks family does. I mean, that's always an event. It's like the sages of Naimisharanya coming together and committing that we're going to do this assembly until all the living entities go back home, back to Godhead. So similarly, when Janavatsala and Devaki Priti get on the mic, it's like you get many Bhagavatam classes in one. We only made it to about 8:30, which is still pretty good, but can't compare with Janavatsala. We should probably finish here. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. Thanks for adding. Thanks for glorifying the other devotees. It's so sweet. It's the real nourishment. Who needs breakfast when we can just hear and chant about Krishna together like this? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nittai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bo.